Hello, my name is John Anslinger, and I'm at the Fort Branch Public Library in Fort Branch, Indiana. Today is Wednesday, June 17th, 2026. My guests today are Jerry and Patty Woehler of Haubstadt, Indiana, and we're going to be talking about the very unique and very special contribution these guys have made over the years to the children and families in this area. Welcome, Jerry. Welcome, Patty. And thank you very much for being a part of this oral history program. So let's start this conversation at the beginning. Just what was this special Christmas time contribution that you guys have made?
Well, I think the biggest contribution you can make outside of Jesus coming on Christmas is Santa Claus. And Santa Claus there's been quite a few of them in my life, and I've also been Santa Claus for 30 some odd years from beginning to end, and it's really something that was meaningful to us both, and it was just kind of a gift, I guess, that got me started with Santa Claus back in the late 70s, early 80s. We got started as an individual by working with people at a farmer place where I was employed at, General Foods. They supplied us with some money to go out and do some good in Evansville. And we really tried to do that. They gave us maybe $3,000 or $5,000, something like that, and said, go out and do things for Evansville. So we would donate. We've donated to the zoo. We donated to other establishments. The Reading Carol, that was one of them that we donated to at that particular time. We donated quite a bit of money, but we also used some of that money in a respect of they were wanting to do something for people that were to show our appreciation for them. So what we came up with was doing something in nursing homes. We had a wonderful time for quite a few years. Working in nursing homes, we'd pre-schedule our visit with them. We would bring our little elves along with us, which weren't always so little, but we had elves with us, and we brought gifts for these people, and we just had a jolly old time. People just loved us. I mean, once I came out with a Santa Claus suit, I found out that I changed. All of a sudden, I wasn't Jerry Woehler anymore. I was Santa Claus. And I think that took a little while for that to soak in, if you know what I mean, because when I put on my suit, obviously I became Mr. Claus himself. And be surprised what kind of nice people come up to you and talk to you and want to be your friend. Probably because they want something really nice for Christmas. And I thought that was always neat because after we would make our tour through the nursing homes, we would go into another room. I would undress and dress into my civvies again, come out carrying my Santa Claus suit in a black bag. No one knew that I was Santa Claus. Everyone saw me as Jerry Woehler, and you'd be surprised how meaningless my presence was to anybody. They would just look at me and say, you know, you want to move out of the way, sir? You're kind of in the way. And okay, we'll take care of that. But it was really something that struck me as far as my being Santa Claus. In other words, I had to up my game. I wasn't Jerry Woehler anymore. I was Santa Claus, and that's one reason I never drank while I was Santa Claus. I always watched my language, which sometimes in the past was a little difficult for me to do. And I had to be attentive to other people and what they're telling me and what they want. So these are things to help me change my life. I tried to be Santa Claus without my suit on, you might say, in my life, and it's been kind of extraordinary how that all has played out. Uh, Quite a few years after I left my job at General Foods, I was employed at Saints Peter and Paul. And while I was at Saints Peter and Paul, that was a big change from 30 years of factory life and factory talking to move into a kindergarten through fifth grade. I really had to watch what I said and what I did and how I presented myself. And that was a big help to me to get a start that way. I was attending mass and doing this all the time, and I became a better person by trying to emulate Santa Claus and the guy that was in this suit. So I think it bettered my life, and it done something for me. And I know while I was going through this transformation, we were doing that, like I said, at General Foods. When that stopped, we kind of got a notion of even before that we started doing Santa Claus in Haubstadt, and we put my outfit on, and they just saw the old jolly ho ho ho. We'd get around, we'd do several people, and Patty, of course, she would be with me. But the problem at the time is that it was one of them things that I was having all the fun. I was doing, I don't mean I was doing it all. She was being my escort, and she would drive me around. I'd get out and go in, have a big blast at these people's homes. And after a while, I asked her, I said, hon, why don't you think about getting an outfit yourself and being Mrs. Claus for me and the kids? And it's like I told her. Whenever kids, if you put yourself in that Christmas mode, you got kids that just all day long they're looking forward to Santa. Oh, Santa's coming! I got to be good. Santa's coming, and this is going to happen. And all these things are going through these kids' minds. And here I come, and I ring the doorbell or I knock on their door, and mom or dad would go over and open the door, and here is this 6'1" Santa Claus that looked like he weighed about 250 pounds, full beard, full outfit on, and a ho ho ho, and I would come in. And you never saw so many kids running for their mother to climb over their shoulders and get in back of them to get away from me. And this is one reason that it worked out so perfect for Patty to come in with me, because they were a little afraid of me sometimes. But for her, look at her. She's a pretty person. And she didn't have a beard. So all this worked out very well for us. And, if they weren't real anxious to come to me, they were to her. And the biggest thing I tried to do is when I came in So I wanted these kids to leave whenever I left. I wanted it to be like Santa Claus is their friend, not something they were afraid of anymore. So we would talk and we'd get them gifts, and you'd be surprised when you give these 5-year-olds or whatever a gift, automatically you become pretty close to them. So the more gifts I give them, the closer they got. And before long, actually, they were sitting on my knee and taking a smiling picture. And that's when I knew that I had something going for me. That's when I knew that I was doing a good job. I did not want to leave these kids crying all the while I was there and when I was going out the door. But, you know, for Patty and her part, maybe she can fill you in a little bit on her aspect of it and what these kids meant to her.
Well, Patty, I have a question.
Okay.
You know, it's apparent that these Santa Claus activities made a big impact on Jerry's life and the way he thought and the way he acted. What kind of impact did it have on you?
Yep.
I'd say it had a good impact on me. I mean, to see all these little kids come running and see Santa, but then they back off and then they come to me because, like he said, I don't have the beard. I wasn't scary like he was. And, you know, they just felt more comfortable. And just to, you know, especially like, say, 2 years old up. The rest of them, I mean, you know, they get scared, but a little older, you know, 2, 3 years old, they kind of shy away and they want to not see him, but yet they want him. You know what I'm saying? They like Santa, but they don't want to get close to him. So a lot of times I would hold them and get kind of behind him and back up, and then we'd get a good picture, you know. But yeah, it was very rewarding for me too to see all these kids and have a good time. We really had a good time. You know, there's been times where it was kind of grueling with the weather and stuff like that, but you know, we dealt with it because we had to get there because these kids were expecting us and we couldn't let them down. So
Some of these stories that I had heard previously about the weather and the difficulties you had was a time in a big snowstorm and you couldn't get to the house.
Right.
Can you speak
Yeah.
to that one?
I kind of
David,
took care of the books and scheduled people. And this one year it was, I mean, we had almost like a blizzard, you know, you couldn't hardly get out into the country. And we had several people that lived in the country and, you know, we had to leave a little more time. So, but a lot of them canceled out because they didn't want us out in the weather. But we had one particular family that really wanted us to come for their grandkids. So they called up and they said, look, we know it's really bad, but you know, how about if we come pick you up? So they met us in front of the church and we got into his Jeep or whatever it was, and he took us right out to their house, pulled in the garage, and there we were, Santa. So it was very, very neat because, you know, you don't expect people to come pick you up. You expect to go to them in your sleigh, and, you know, it's just something different.
Yeah.
So.
And there was another time whenever we were going out to the Haubstadt Park. And if you know the Haubstadt Park very well, you go across the small bridge down here at the bottom of a hill, and then you go up a hill to where the shelter is up there, and then you enjoy yourself. Well,
I was driving, of course.
Yeah,
So.
with Patty driving, it had started snowing that afternoon well before we got there, and everybody else was in the place having a good time, waiting on us. Well, in the meantime, we were out here trying to get up that hill. We tried a couple of times, and the harder we tried, the more we got over here closer to a ditch. that if you got in that, you would still be there the next day.
Well,
So
needless to say,
we actually, what we did was is got out, walked up to the place, and we told them what happened and where our sleigh was parked at, and we ended up having a wonderful time in there, talking to everybody, giving out gifts, and hoing it up. And in the meantime, we had told them where our car was at, partially in, partially out, partially up that hill. And there was other ones in the group that went out and helped get our car out for us. They brought it right up to the door, and there we were, blessed again by someone else's generosity. We really learned that through time, that there are times where we're blessed. We bless people by being there, but so many of the blessings is what we get from them. It works both ways while you're doing this Santa Claus thing. And I know there was times to where, like a big thing about us was whenever we started this is that we would not outprice ourselves, that someone couldn't hire us, let's say, to come in and do Santa Claus for their kids. Because we would always tell them, they would always ask, well, how much does this cost? We tell them, whatever you feel like it's worth to you is fine with us. Whatever you can afford is fine with us. Just we want to be there to have the kids to have a good day. And I know there was one family that we went through about 2 years, maybe going on the third year, that they didn't give us anything. And we just kind of wondered, hoping there wasn't a serious financial problem there. And we kept coming back though. They kept calling us and saying, would you come in and do our grandkids and kids? And yes, we will. And we finally did that third year. We went back again, and they just like showered us with gifts ourselves. And it just made us feel so good that hopefully they were out of the condition they were in and times got better for them. And we really enjoyed that. Like I did Santa Claus over at St. Peter and Paul School. And I remember one time, one child, she came up and sat on my lap. She was probably in the third grade or something like this. And she kind of looked me in the eyes, and she looked a little teary-eyed to me. And it made me worry, because she said, Santa, could you make my mom and dad come back together again? And it was like, oh, okay. I tell you what, child, we will pray. And I knew the kids' parents, and I knew what the situation was. And we told her that we will do everything that Santa Claus can do to make this happen. But you got to remember that sometimes everything we want don't always come true. So you just have to pray along with us and hope, okay? And she kind of smiled after that and thought, well, that would be really great, because Santa Claus can do anything, right? But we tried to prepare her that maybe this won't happen. And there was another time that I went to Evansville, and we went to Evansville, and I went to a person's house that this girl was dying of cancer. And she just was the sweetest little child you ever wanted to see. As a matter of fact, I think she was on that Make-A-Wish thing. And she was wanting Santa Claus too. And you know, when you get into a position like that, it's really tough to find yourself not throwing your whole self into it, because the worst thing I wanted to do was sit there and be a crying Santa in front of them. So I tried to bring them hope, and I was just telling them how good they look and how wonderful of a day this is, to enjoy this day and bring more of Christ into your life, and be a good person. Even though you're a little girl, you mean a lot to your mom and dad, and just be a good person to them, and be thankful for all the things that you do have in life. And there was another time. I mean, this happened more than once, but moving on to another story, we went to the Ozanam shelter. And, you know, we all take it for granted that, well, at the end of the day, what do? We go home, we get in our own bed, we take a good night's rest, and we're back going again the next day, right? Even in the North Pole. Oh, anyways, that's our normal day. Well, we think everyone has a normal day like that, but guess what? They don't. And one of the first times that I dealt with the Ozanam shelter was a time another little girl, she wanted to come up and sit on my lap. And we got to talking, and naturally you say, well, what do you want for Christmas? Well, she could have a list as tall as what I am. She didn't say anything about wanting a new doll or wanting new clothes. She more or less looked at me, and she said all she wanted was her own bed. Sad. So sad.
Yeah.
That we have to, those of us that has more need to give more to eliminate that problem for all these kids. So do your best. Santa tries to help them out, and we try to do what we can for these kids. But they're the ones that it takes a toll on. When you put that suit on and this hat, you go out and you are something that you're not. You try to be Santa, and you try to give everybody everything they want, but we fail. We can't give everybody everything that they want. Somewhere down the line, I really picked up on the fact that this was really a ministry for us. It wasn't just a job to do. It was a ministry. And we tried to do our best to make people feel good. And we tried that for the rest of our time. And I thought that was, that this was a ministry to bring Santa to the needy, bring hope to people. And that's really what we did. we tried to bring hope. And there's been many times that we were able to give kids obviously presents, and they just appreciated it to no end. But what we really tried to do, and there were many of them too, that when we come into their house, what did we do first? We would pray. We would pray for our gifts. The family and us, we'd get down on our knees and we would pray and thank the dear Lord for all the gifts that we have, and thank Him for a few of the things that we would like to have, but we don't have. That's kind of up to Him to bring this to the people, not because we want to give it to them. The Lord wants them to have a certain amount of things in life, and some things He don't. And we don't understand why, but that's the way the Lord operates, and that's what I've always felt like we did. We bring the Lord with us into these homes, and we try to be everything that we can be to these people, but we can't be everything for these people. I thought this morning, I said, now we bring Christ to people through my prison ministry and our hospice ministry. You know, it kind of went through a real transformation of hanging up my Santa suit and picking up a badge, 2 badges, of being something to someone else in need. And that's exactly what I've done. And with the help of Patty, she's still my helper and my go-to person with allowing me to do things like this. And I need that. I need that so much in this time. I have hung up my suit to where you can see it back here. I hung up my Santa suit and I picked up my ministry suit to go out and help other people yet, and not bring them toys and things that matter that way, but I try to bring them something even more important. Try to bring them Jesus Christ, and try to make them understand that for people that are about to die, what a blessing you are. You're going to be seeing the Lord very soon. For guys up in prison, my biggest thing to them is that whatever happened in your past, that's behind you. Forget about it. Make amends for it. You're paying for it right now for being in this prison. But today starts a new day in the rest of your life. Let Jesus guide you, and let Him guide all of us into whatever ministries that we decide to follow in our lives. And I think that I would just really love to thank John and people like him that bring people like us in to tell our story of how we got where we are through the help of the Lord. And I can't say thank you enough. To be able to tell our story of how we've taken about 30 years of being Santa, and some of the stories that we went through, there's been hundreds more, hundreds. We was at one time doing about 25 households on Christmas Eve. And if you think that's not a problem for my driver and navigator over here, throw snow in on top of it. And it really produces a challenge. But the thing that made us worthwhile is not opening up envelopes at the end of the day and seeing if we got any money or not or what. It was all the smiling, happy faces that we saw. And I know I've seen a lot, and they're still kids that I look at today. I know there was one named Ella that she was kind of one of my favorites, but I had about 50 other favorites. But people get close to you, and every time I would see her, there was always a little extra smile there come out of her for me, and I appreciate other people too, and I hope we did them a lot of good.
Jerry, it's very obvious listening to your story that the act of putting on the Santa Claus suit, having Mrs. Claus travel with you, interacting with families and children, not only made a big impact on them, but it's made a huge impact on you and your future, you know, through your ministries in the prisons and that sort of thing. You're blessed, obviously, and you're to be congratulated for the efforts that you have put forth.
I appreciate that, John, and I mainly I want to thank you for making this part of the history of this town and the things we can do in our lives that help other people. It's it's like I told people before, it's like it gives you inner peace. And you can't go out to the store and buy a pound of inner peace. It's not given out like that. It comes from the Lord. And that's the inner peace that we feel. And only He can give it to us. And I just want to thank you again.
You're quite welcome, Jerry, and thank you both. Jerry, thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
For taking your time to speak with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
You're
John.
welcome.
God bless you guys.